This is Leadership in Action, and I'm Casey Cheshire. Join me as we delve deep into the passions, expertise, and experiences of Boston area innovators. Sponsored by the Boston chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization. This is Leadership in Action. The button is clicked. We're locked into the roller coaster. I'm excited to get started here. And today's guest is a leader, an entrepreneur, a motivator. He's also an innovator in the landscaping industry, member of EO Boston, co-owner and president of Landscape America, Doug McDuff. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Casey. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, man. I can't wait to crack this one open. I know you're going to come out swinging with this myth. So I just want to pass it over to you real quick. What is a common misconception or myth around leadership or being an entrepreneur and running a business?
Yeah, I think a common myth that I like to bust is that sharing your financials with your team is scary and it's going to interrupt the business. And it's quite the opposite, actually.
Okay. Yeah, this is a really good one because I need to get into this. So it is kind of scary because what are people thinking? Like, why are people thinking that they don't want to share? Why don't employers share?
I think a lot of employers think that if they share financials with the team's going to have an inside look at how much money the business is making or how much money the owners are making, or like maybe potentially go off on their own. So their owners create all these stories in their heads about why it's bad to share financials. But in fact, the team is actually creating these stories in their own head about what you're making, how much money the business has, and so forth. So it just makes sense to share the financials and be transparent. And through that process, you get engagement from the employees. And that's the most important thing, is to try to get your whole team engaged in the idea that business is a team sport.
Yeah, I love this. So many things here. First of all, the idea of the stories in our heads, I totally get that. We're thinking, oh man, if I share, they're gonna think I'm a millionaire. But to your point, they're already thinking these stories. They're already making some kind of guesstimate anyways. So, and if you actually share with them, they'll probably realize you're not actually making $12 million a year.
Yeah, in fact, most of the time, it's almost embarrassing to tell them what we're making as owners, uh, or what the business is making. I've heard stories of that in the past where you tell the employees, hey, this is how much net profit we're making on a job, and the employees are like, "What are you talking about? Like, I thought we'd made, on a $100,000 job, I thought we'd profit 50,000." And in our industry, average is probably between like a 5 and 15% net. So, it's far from that 50% net that a lot of employees may have in their head. And when you share that information with them and you let them know what are the true costs of doing the work that we do, it starts to create an environment where they're trying to win, because ultimately we all want to win. Employees all want to win too. And so if you can show them that path and get them to understand what is a win and how do we get there, that's when you get that engagement and that team sport atmosphere.
Yeah, that's huge, man. The idea of engagement, because otherwise they're off on their own, making their own stories up, you know, and whether they're being, wasteful or not, but when you write them into the story, now maybe they're looking at things differently. If they realize the job doesn't have that huge margin and man, we're only, getting a little bit as a company, maybe they're going to mind their vendors a little bit closer and just pay a little more attention. Or I don't know what kind of engagement do you get? Like, what does that even mean when they're more engaged? And is that a good thing? Or that could be, I guess that could be a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I think when the employees are engaged, they're making decisions on a daily basis that do affect the profitability. Regardless, they're making these decisions they're going to affect the profitability in a positive or a negative way, right? So their daily behaviors and their decisions they're happening anyways. But when you can get them to understand that, hey, if you make this certain decision or if your behavior changes to this, then we're all going to win as a team. And so, there's the process that we follow. It's open book management.
Mm.
And so it's about sharing your finances with the team and really creating that engagement. And there's four sort of steps to getting there.
Okay.
Um,
That's awesome.
and so the first step is define winning, like define what a win is. And we think about that analogy that we hear all the time about sports. And, how does the team know when the game's over if they've won or not? Or how does the team know what the win is? And so that exercise with open book management is we go through this process of we survey our customers, we survey our team, we look at our financials, and we come up with a metric to track. That's going to be the metric that's the win. And in our business, it's gross profit dollars. So our whole team is tracking gross profit dollars, and that's what we define as a win. So at the beginning of the year, we set a number and say, hey, this is the number we want to achieve for gross profit. And everyone knows what it is, and we're all driving towards that. The second piece is to create a scoreboard
Hmm.
around that metric. And that scoreboard needs to be visible and shared with everyone so everyone can see it. And so the scoreboard's going to track things like your revenue, your cost of goods, and then our metric, which is gross profit. And that scoreboard is then turned into number three, which is a bonus plan. So the scoreboard ties into your bonus plan, which again, you're tracking gross profit dollars in our company. And so our team members know that they can look at the scoreboard and see, all right, what am I going to achieve for a bonus at the end of the year if we hit the gross profit we need to? Number four is we forecast and we drive results. So we do a weekly forecast with our team members, our managers participate in that. And so we're forecasting revenue and cost of goods sold for each one of our sort of sales buckets. And in our organization, it's maintenance, enhancements, snow, and design build. And so each manager reports the numbers for the months that we're in and then the next month. So we're kind of looking into the future as opposed to looking in the rearview mirror. Before we were doing open book, I'd always say that, we're looking in the rearview mirror all the time because by the time our actuals were done for the month, we were 15 days into that month and we were looking at things that happened potentially 45 days ago, and you can't adjust. You can't change anything at that point. You're committed, it's done.
Right.
So forecasting helps us to kind of see what's going to happen in the future. And then we can make some changes on the fly, and we can shift and adjust the plan and try to hit those goals. So define winning, create a scoreboard, have a bonus plan that's tied to it, and then forecast and drive the results.
Man, how long you been doing this?
So we started in 2018. So it's our third year with Open Book. We had a coach help us implement that process. And so we've been running it now for a year on our own. So we had the coach with us for 2 years.
Were they helping with more than that or just specifically to help with the open book transition?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, our coach is he's still involved in our company, and he still does leadership coaching with my
Oh,
brother and myself. Uh,
nice.
but but for this particular instance, he was helping us to implement open book and helping us understand how to get it all into the business. And then the most important thing is how to connect the dots with the team members.
Yeah. That's smart, man. I mean, having a coach for anything is huge, but I could see how, especially if you're like, I don't, I want to do this wrong, you know. I think probably a lot of people listening really appreciate the fact that you've got the four core elements detailed out. I mean, that's because it's one thing to just come on here and say, oh, open book is great, but you're like, no, 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 open book specifically this way. And the fact that you worked with a coach to make sure you're minding the details makes a lot of sense. It's like you're planning for it to work as opposed to just winging it, and having it fail.
Yeah, and I think having the coach involved too drives that discipline because we've tried other things in our business that we've tried to implement on our own, and just like I say all the time, like we chase the squirrel. The next cool thing pops up, and we say, all right, we're going to implement that, but then another squirrel runs by, and we go, oh, chase that one instead. And having a coach involved absolutely helped us to implement it efficiently and
Yeah.
quickly, and kept that weekly cadence of the forecasting meetings.
What's his name? You want to give him a shout out?
Yeah, it's Dan Foley.
Dan
Uh,
Foley.
Dan
Sup?
Foley's he's a great guy. He's a friend. He had a landscape business that he ran for 30 years or so, and he had implemented open book coaching into his business and ran it that way. And so he sold his business to a national company in 2009, worked for that national provider for 5 years, and then retired in 2014. And he started to do a lot more of this open book coaching. So yeah, he's been sort of our guidance through this whole process.
Man, having someone like that in your corner, I mean, is priceless. Someone not just a general coach, but someone who understands the business, and successfully grew something, and that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
absolutely awesome.
he keeps us on track for sure. We still do monthly calls with him, and it's great. He starts off with bright spots and has us talk about the positives in business, and that's helpful for me too, because a lot of times we just focus on what's going on in a negative sense, or what's going wrong in the business, and he gets us to kind of look at, hey, how far have we come? What are we doing well? And that's super important as well.
Isn't how that isn't that funny that that's how that is? I same here, right? You ask me, how's the business going? I can think of, a whole list of things. I could list for days things that I want to improve, things that we can work on that I know are missing, we need to add. But to have someone say, hold on a second, what's working well? Just to remind you that, oh yeah, you just got the new customer, or you just, new equipment or new teammate or whatever it is, just to pause for a second for that positive, a little bit of gratitude, at the beginning.
Yeah, and share that with our team too, right? I mean, we tend
Yeah.
to talk about where do we need to go and what do we need to do better, and maybe what are we doing wrong right now. And really what we should be talking to our team about is, hey, nice job with that project the other day. You brought it in 10 man hours under what we had projected, and that's great. And here's why that was a big win for the company. And those instances tend to help drive employees to want to do better, rather than saying, "Oh man, we missed that job by 10 hours the other day. What went wrong? What are we going to do better?" It's like we're coaching them to be negative all the time. We're always focusing on that.
That's a great point. It sort of rolls downhill, like how we act can set the tone for everyone else. Is this going to be we're all pecking at each other, or are we all going to be, hey, this is awesome. This is awesome. Let's go. I think sometimes the overly positive CEO gets the bad rap of being like, out of touch, but just as much the always negative one is like a drag.
Yeah, totally. And we have the metrics on the scoreboard that tell us if we're doing good or we're not doing good. As an organization, everyone knows where we're at, and but that communication to the crew is so important to be positive. And we have a saying around here that high fives are free. So just high five each other, and talk about positive things. And then if a negative thing occurs, we do talk about it. We explain why it negatively affected our gross profit, but we don't harp on that. We harp on the bright spots.
It's interesting. I think scorecards can do that. Scoreboards can sometimes they can be the bad guy, and like then everybody knows, and especially if we're all focusing. And to your point, it's a place where people can all see it. It's on there. It's red. We all know it's tied to that bonus plan or whatnot, and so you don't have to be the bad guy always bringing up the bad number. It's like we're all looking at it. What can we do to make this thing better? Kind of twist it around and make it more action oriented.
Yeah, and you just hit on a hurdle or a speed bump in that open book process that sometimes when we have negative things going on in the business, the team does know about it, and sometimes it can feel like, that sort of weight is on everyone's shoulders, and everyone feels like there's a monkey in their back because things aren't going as well as we had planned them to. So, um, you want to be transparent with the team, and then when things aren't going well, you still want them to know about it, but we sort of shift our communication when things aren't going well, and we try to focus on positive things and not focus on that negative feeling, because it is on the scorecard, like you said, it's out there, it's on the open, so everyone knows at that point, and we don't want to harp on that and make it feel like the whole culture is negative.
Right. Right. Yeah. Man, that's huge. Oh, this is great takeaways, man. Your question too, you working with the coach and partners and whatnot. Curious if often you hear that the phrase if it's, it's isolating or it's lonely at the top. As a business owner, do you have any resources or communities or groups or things that you leverage to stay connected and, not isolated and lonely per se?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in conferences, seminars, networking. So I spend a lot of time at national association events, statewide association events. I've definitely been very involved in our state association, Mass Landscape Professionals. I am involved in a business group, the Blue Hills Business Group, and so I meet once a month with that group, and we talk about how to share our resources as far as the networking stance goes, and then EO. I'm a new EO member. I joined, let's see, probably 4 months ago, but I'm loving it so far. I think the seminars have been great. The networking has been outstanding. I've met some amazing people that have already helped me in my business, and I think that's super important. As you said, it is lonely at the top, and it's great to have thought partners in the business and outside of the business that can help you kind of see those pitfalls and make sure you don't fall into them or help you climb out of them when you do.
Yeah, exactly, right. Just it's great having people that can relate to things, but also I think sometimes the difference for me, I mean, I agree events are fantastic for this, but oftentimes it's that confidentiality that comes from EO, just knowing that you can just sort of put it out there, whether it's something HR related or just like it's like gnawing at you. You just sort of put it out there, and even if people don't, it's not necessarily about a solution, but they've experienced it too, and they're just like, "Yep, I've been there." You'll get through this one,
Yeah,
and you will, but it's just great to hear it from some other folks who are like, yeah, I know. It's one of the prices we pay and you'll get through that one like we did. It's just good to have that kind of that community around you.
totally. Even being an open book company, there's certain things that maybe we're seeing coming down the road that we, we have to keep it close to our vest. We can't share it with the team. And having EOs, that resource of confidentiality, I can share things with my EO forum that I wouldn't necessarily share with my leadership team, or I wouldn't share with our field team. So and get some of their experience and learn from that.
Yeah, I think sometimes if there's like nervous energy or excitement energy or anxious energy, sometimes you do need to distill it a little bit, you know, and before you or focus it, maybe it's a little all over the place or whatever version of that, someone has. It's good to bounce it off some people, kind of refine it a little bit, then be like, okay, now it's ready to share with the larger team, not just throwing them stuff straight from the hip.
Yeah, yeah, and have them hold you accountable as well.
Yeah, yeah, the accountability is huge. That's totally huge. Um, yeah, cool, man. A couple other questions for you. I just wanted to sort of pick your brain. Do you do a lot of reading, and do you have a most recommended book?
Yeah, I've gotten really into podcasts lately, and I use Audible. Like, I love Audible. So I drive in the truck a lot, so I'm always listening to audiobooks. Um, my my favorite book is Shoe Dog. It's a book about Nike, and it's super relatable, especially if you're going through a tough time in business. Because if you read the book, like Phil Knight and Nike, they were on the verge of bankruptcy, like through the majority of I would say the first 15 years of business, and they had all these fights with like the feds and a fight with their shoe supplier, and they had to start over again, and it's a crazy story, and it's so well
Really?
told. So yeah, it's a fascinating book, and and in the end, there's like in the end they go public and they make a ton of money. Like all the guys that helped build the business up all make a fortune. They go from basically being bankrupt to like millionaires overnight, and it's a cool book.
Man, that's so cool. I think I have. We talked about earlier. I have this, but I hadn't sort of read it yet. It's sort of just sitting there, and I'm like, do I want to read that? But it sounds like, man, that it's way tougher than the brand makes you think. You think like, oh, Nike, they just had these shoes and I'm sure they just did fine. And it's like, no, they were fighting it out the whole time. Gee.
Oh yeah, yeah. Do you listen to Audible? Do you? Do you use
Yeah,
that
I
at
do
all?
like Audible. Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
It,
So, oh yeah, Shoe Dog on it does Phil read it himself?
no, but the narrator's
There
fascinating.
it
Like,
is, right? All right.
yeah, does a really good job. So yeah, you'll enjoy the book for sure.
Awesome. And since you mentioned podcasts, and it's kind of cool to talk about podcasts while on a podcast, do you have any top ones that you like to listen to there? You could
Actually,
recommend.
I've enjoyed your podcast. I've listened to all of them. They've been awesome.
Hey, which
And
one?
and it's fun to, leadership's in action, and it's fun to listen to, like, our fellow EO people, and, like, I've learned more about them listening to the podcast than just, getting to know them, and, at networking events too. I'm like, "Holy cow, like, this dude built this business and sold it," and, I love the stories, so that's been cool. EO 360 is another good one, that I've been listening to, Dave Will, and then I have a few industry ones I listen to all the time. There's a young professionals network in our green industry. That's a really good one. It's more landscape related, but they focus on business, and that's my passion is to learn about business and then apply it to our landscape business.
Yeah, learn about business and then apply it. Isn't it way more fun learning something when you can have the ability to apply it somewhere?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've always loved education and loved learning things and like the evolution of going from being the guy out in the field, literally putting pavers in the ground and planting trees and mowing lawns to now running an organization it's been just a crazy evolution, but I've had to learn these things the whole way and learn about business. And, you know, it's, it's, it's amazing that I actually enjoy running the business more than I did being a landscaper. I feel really fortunate and lucky that that's the case, because I don't think that's the case for everyone. But
Right.
yeah, I'm a lifelong learner. Love it.
Yeah, I think back to school and, it's like applying lessons without something you can apply them to is just like so boring or it doesn't really connect. But as soon as there's like E I I love learning like you, it sounds like when you're like, "Oh, I can apply that tomorrow." Like, I'm gonna tell my team about that. We gotta try that. Like, it's so much more practical. You can put it to work. You can test it out, and maybe it helps you out of some pain you're experiencing. I think maybe that's the thing in school is you're not really in any pain, so you don't really care about the solution per se. You're like, "Ah, what do I" and also maybe they're not really teaching things you can use necessarily, but it's like, oh, you're in pain. How do you solve this thing? You read a book or listen to a podcast, and that one little idea, right? Maybe it's this whole podcast. You're not really paying attention, but you get this one little nugget, and then you just take that and run with it tomorrow or that day, that night. You're on email, just sending your team a flurry of emails.
It's so funny. I go to the conferences and I come back and my team's like, "Oh, what the hell?" Like, I get so much energy and I have all these ideas and I'm like, yeah, I get so jacked up going to conferences and meeting new people and now that's happening even more frequently as I go to these EO events. I'm like coming back, meeting these people and I'm like, "Oh man, I got to apply that like tomorrow. I got to implement that in our business." And the team's like, "Oh boy," the eyes roll. Here comes Doug, this new idea.
Yeah. It's funny. Like, that's how that's how we started in the first place, right? It's those ideas. So as long as we're not, whiplashing the group too much, then, we gotta keep the ideas going, though. I think sometimes when you grow to a certain point, it's too easy to just stop turn off that valve, or maybe you build an organization that doesn't appreciate them, and you gotta make sure that, you build in that visionary type role into a company so that you're 'cause I think that's where the future growth comes from. I think the growth that got us to a certain point, it's probably a different growth thing to get us to the next point. So you gotta keep having those ideas. Crazy. Hey, my next question, man. I know we've talked a couple times, but like, who are you? Tell me your story. You mentioned that you're constantly learning and applying things, and you started out planting bushes and trees. Take me back in time, like little Doug days. Where'd you grow up? Did you always know you're going to be like boss man on the podcast talking about things, or what did you want to be?
Little Doug days. That's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, so I grew up actually not far from Boston in Norwood, um, in I would say, lower, not quite middle class family, but we didn't know that as we were growing up. We had a really good childhood. I would say, we were sort of in a bubble, um, but things were things are great. Both my parents were super loving and supportive, and my dad worked as a liquor store manager, and he drove for a courier service as well. So he always had a couple of jobs, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and so I'm one of four. So I have an older brother, my younger brother is my business partner, and then a younger sister. And yeah, I was always the one in the family that was sort of, driven and sort of, zigged when everyone else zagged. And so I don't know that I would say I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur when I was younger, but I didn't apply myself in high school. But when I got to college, um, so in high school, I'll back up for a second. In high school, my guidance counselor was like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just want to be outside. I like outdoors, so I want to be outside." I said, "Maybe I'll be like a park ranger or something." And he's like, "Well, check out the Stockbridge School of Agriculture at UMass Amherst, and they have a landscape program out there." And and so I was like, "Okay, I'll do that." Like that's what it took. And so I applied there. It's the only place I applied. I got in, and I got to school at UMass. And I was like, "Dude, I love this. I love it." So I really got into landscaping. I started to apply myself at school and got good grades, much better grades than I had in high school.
Yeah.
And then I worked for a company in Needham called Hartney Graham, and it was like a $10 million company back in, this is like 2000, 2001. So it was a sizable landscape and tree company. And I learned so much from them. Like, they had an amazing culture. They fostered education. They pushed safety. So it was just a really good experience to work there. But when I graduated from school, I was still there. So I stayed there for a total of about 5 years, but 3.5 was when I was in college. So I was there full time for 2 years, and I'm like, I want to sell. I want to be a salesperson. And my manager was like, "Settle down, kid. Like, stay in the field, learn the ropes a little bit more, and you'll be able to sell at some point, but now's not the time." And I was full of piss and vinegar, and I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? Screw this. I'm out of here." And so I left. And this will tell you how smart I am. I had, I was making good money for a 22-year-old kid. I was making like 70 grand a year. And I quit and started my own company with no customers, like nothing. I had nothing at all. And I convinced my brother to come with me. And so there's the two of us, like, starting a company right before the recession. We had no idea.
Jeez.
Like, yeah, it was crazy. So we just started to grind and work and work, and then, yes, I mean, we can fast forward 15 years later, and it's been amazing. We've got 50 employees, and you know we have a strong company, and we're charging forward to double this thing in the next 5 years. So it's been a good journey.
Wild ride. So that one that you bounced, and you and your brother in 15 years, that's the company. That was the one you built, is what the one you're in now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That's amazing.
we hit like $1 million in revenue by year three, and we were just going. At that point, I pulled myself out of the field, and I just started to sell full time. And it took me a while to kind of understand that we were doing so much design build work, which is not reoccurring. And
Mhm.
we were making that sort of the growing the business around that. It took me until probably like 2017 to realize this isn't going to be a scalable business for us. We need to really focus on maintenance and snow, because that's reoccurring, and we don't have to resell 100% of the portfolio every year. So 4 years ago, we started to make a shift to reoccurring revenue. And so now that design build portion that was about 65% of our makeup is now under 20%. And the rest of our business is maintenance and snow.
Wow.
And it's really changed a lot of the culture, and it's changed a lot of my lifestyle too. I'm not working 100 hours a week anymore. I'm not banging my head against the wall trying to sell all that work every year. So it's been a really good shift for us.
Man, that what a cool story. You just was it persistence? I mean, you just kept at it. Did you have the answers, or you just had the drive to do it long ago?
I think it's drive, but it's definitely I didn't have the answers. I didn't even know
Yeah.
what profit was, I had no idea. But it was networking, honestly, like networking, not to grow our business per se, not to win more sales. It was networking to understand how to grow a business. I was networking with my peers. I wasn't going to like a BNI group or anything like that. I was finding, hey, who's the $10 million players in the Massachusetts market, and can I come and visit you and pick your brain and see the insides of your company? It's like, can I talk to your operations guy? Can I talk to your sales guy? And that's how I learned. That's how I learned to run a business, really. And it's been super rewarding to learn that way, and I've created the greatest group of friends. All my friends are landscapers, and they all run, businesses that are strong and successful. And now, sort of like a peer group, I can bounce ideas off of them, and they call me for stuff. Um, and so it's a cool network. The green industry is very open and honest with each other.
That's cool. I mean, there's so much business out there. It's always great when you have an industry or several companies who aren't trying to like just destroy each other, and they realize there's just infinite customers out there that they can collaborate on. Hypothetical question for you. I may have a time machine up here in New Hampshire. It may or may not have it. Can't confirm or deny it. But it's under a tarp in the backyard. So you come on up, we get some beers, and you get to use the time machine, right? But it's a particular kind of machine. It goes back in time, and it goes a couple days after that degree. You got out the urban forestry. You're all done. A few days after that graduation, you get to go meet yourself. What kind of things are you telling yourself? What kind of advice are you giving yourself?
I would say be confident. I think from my upbringing, I tend to lack confidence in my abilities, my experience, especially comparing myself to others. And so I would say be more confident, trust yourself, and then just be in this for the long haul. Like play the long game. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And be disciplined and persistent. I think that the more persistent you can be and the more disciplined you can be, you're just going to get so much farther ahead than other people, because discipline has been super hard for a lot of people to inflict in their life. And, for me, I'm a creature of habit. And if I get something in my normal repertoire, I can continue to do that. And that's been a huge help. And, yeah, the discipline is huge. Like Jocko Willink and those guys have got me to understand from reading those books, like you have to trick your mind and trick your mind and be disciplined every day, and tell those little voices you hear that say like, hey, duck out of work early, or don't go for a run, or whatever. You got to block those out and just drive towards the goal.
Does he have? I mean, he's a great guy. I've heard him on some podcasts. Jocko. Just when it comes to tricking your mind, did he have any tips on that? Like, how do you trick yourself? Do the right thing.
Yeah, so, Jocko, and I think David Goggins is another one, if you've heard of him.
Yeah.
He's amazing, but I love, like, the accountability mirror. If you've heard that, like,
No.
he'll write shit up on a mirror, like, and just say, like, "Hey, you gotta do this," and that way, when you look at yourself in the morning and you see, "I will run 2 miles today," you have to look at yourself and see that, and that's gonna drive you to do it. And if you don't, like, you feel that guilt inside that you're not fulfilling, those things that you said you would do. You're not being accountable to yourself.
Wow. Accountability mirror. This is crazy, man. It is crazy. How do you find time? I know there's some hockey action after work, and I mean, how do you find time to squeeze it in? And how many leagues are you in?
I play in right now I'm in one league and one pickup game. So I play a pickup game every week. Before COVID, we had two leagues, and then both of my girls play hockey as well. I have
Wow.
two daughters and they play. So we're in rinks 7 days a week, and thank God my wife's amazing and she can get the kids to hockey after work and so forth. And I can finish up my work day, and then I get to the games on the weekends, and I'm able to sneak out to my games at 9, 10 o'clock at night. I have one tonight at 10:30.
Oh,
So
geez.
yeah, it's brutal. Tomorrow morning's 6:30 meeting at the office is gonna be rough, but it's my exercise and I love it.
What league is it?
It's called Power Play Hockey League.
Okay. Have you heard of the Hockey Academy?
No.
You haven't heard of those guys? Because I've been in some of their leagues. The Hockey Academy. Yeah, they've got some different leagues, and they've got like different. Not that you wanted another one, but maybe you need another league to add to your list. But yeah, the Hockey Academy, they have. That's where I learned. I think we talked earlier that I got into hockey in college. You did too, right? Was that right?
Yeah, I started playing. Well, I tried in high school, and I started when I was in 10th grade. To be honest, my family couldn't really afford for us to play hockey when we were growing up.
Yeah,
So when I got to high school, I tried it, and I sucked compared to the other kids. They've been doing it forever, and I'm just I knew how to skate, but there's that hockey sense that they had better edges and they understood like how to see the game and so forth. And I was so far behind. I was playing pond hockey, for forever. So, but now I play in these call 'em beer leagues, right? And they're late night games, but it's a blast. It's the only exercise that I really get that's like fun. I hate working out, but I do it. But hockey's just a blast.
yeah, it really is, man. You know what? No other sport have I ever uh, had just the sweat streaming down my head. Something about wearing that helmet and just, and you think you're tired, and then oh my goodness, you got to get back out there. Yeah, I used to remember, when I wasn't in shape, I would just be so happy to get off the ice to do a shift, and then it's later on as the season progressed, I'd be in shape and then I'd be pissed. Like, I'm not switching out. Like, I'm staying out here.
Have you watched yourself play yet on a video?
No.
Oh my god, it's amazing how slow we are. Like, we
Oh,
think in
I'm
the
sure.
game, like, we're flying around the ice, and then we watch ourselves on video afterwards, and I'm like, "Holy shit, like, we are old and we suck."
Right, then you go watch a Bruins game and it's zoom right by.
Exactly. Yeah.
We just imagine we're going that fast in our leagues, right? Like,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
so true, man. So true. Oh, this is awesome. Hey, where can people connect with you? Whether it's talk business, professional, whatnot, and then what are some good links for you and the company?
Yeah, so you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on that. And then our company website, www.landscapeamerica.com. It's probably the easiest way to connect with me is through LinkedIn, but my email address is pretty easy too. It's dmcduff@landscapeamerica.com. So my first initial, last name.
Excellent. I'm looking at here. So residential and commercial. And do you have particular territory that you cover for the folks listening? Because this greater Boston area, people listening here. So I know sometimes it's hard to find, landscaping that you can trust. So are the particular areas you cover?
Yeah, it's a pretty wide coverage area, I think, for southeastern Massachusetts, anyways. But for commercial work, we go down as far south as Taunton, up north to Canton, Westwood, and then we follow sort of Route 9 down through Natick, down to Marlborough, and then 495 back to Rentham. So through Milford and then towards Rentham.
Excellent. And one day, all of America.
That's the hope. That's the plan.
Good, man. Well, dude, Doug, this has been awesome, man. Thanks for coming on here and just kind of hanging out and teaching me stuff and just having a good time.
Yeah, I've had a blast. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. And for those people listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did because I have 2 pages of notes front and back over here, then share this episode with someone else. That's how you're a thought leader, just by simply getting some content in some other people's hands. That's the way we make it happen. And yeah, so this has been a great episode. Doug, thank you again, sir.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody. This has been another amazing episode of Leadership in Action. We will see you all next time. Leadership in Action is sponsored by the Boston chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization. As the world's only peer-to-peer network exclusively for entrepreneurs, EO helps transform the lives of those who transform the world.